Welcome to Series 2.2, The Human Function. My goal is to introduce you to an important idea in Aristotle, the idea that all humans have a function, and knowing our human function is a key to knowing happiness. Everyone wishes for happiness, according to Aristotle, and happiness is that term which everyone uses to talk about the best good. We've learned from Socrates in the Apology and from Folio A that there are many proposals about what happiness consists in. Pleasure, say the hedonists; wealth and honors, say the cultivated persons committed to political life. There are many other options. Longevity, raising a family and having a good home. And Aristotle and Socrates in the Apology propose that virtue is the key to happiness. All of those proposals are known, says Aristotle, and there are good arguments for each of them, and there are flaws and questions that each of them raise. We need to solve this problem. What is, in truth, happiness? Well, that's what Aristotle's function argument does. The term function is on the board in the ancient Greek, ergon, E-R-G-O-N. And the translation commonly is function, and another alternate translation is a task. For Aristotle and for presumably other Greek thinkers, function is something that a living thing or an artifact does, which distinguishes it from all the other kinds of things. According to Aristotle, all living things, all artifacts, have some specific function which they uniquely do, which distinguishes them and differentiates them from everything else. Aristotle's proposal is we ought to find out if there is a human function, and that function will be a key to happiness. So in our readings on page 4, Aristotle is shown asking the question, is there a human function? Is there some task which human beings uniquely do? He points out that many common artifacts, spoons, hammers, desks, those things all have functions. We could think and describe what those functions are. Similarly, if we look at in the work world, janitors, flute players, architects, they all have some specific task which they do, which defines their job. And in every case, says Aristotle, we would say a good hammer or a good architect is somebody who does their job well. And we've already learned that virtue is the term used in philosophy to describe that. A person who's an architect who has the virtue of architects will do their job or function well. And that's Aristotle's proposal. If we could discover the human function and discover the virtue of that function, that will give us a rough outline of what happiness is. Is there such a function? Given that all the artifacts have functions, in the natural world we find things having functions. The parts of our bodies, each of our parts of our bodies has a function. The eyes, for example, their function is to see. It seems very plausible that the human being as a whole must have a function. And then also on page 4, Aristotle, through like a process of elimination, arrives at what this function or the area of the human function must be. Well, let's see, says Aristotle, growth, nourishment, and reproduction. Maybe that's our human function. Our job is to grow, nourish ourselves, and reproduce. But then Aristotle says the plants do that. The function of the human being has to be something that we uniquely do that distinguishes our kind from the other kinds of things. The plants grow and nourish better than we do. So that can't be our function. What about, says Aristotle, sense perception? The ability to see the world outside of us, the ability to move from here to there. That's something we do that plants don't do. Maybe that's our human function. And we could add bringing up our children, raising our offspring. Maybe that's something we uniquely do that, for example, plants don't do. Well, the other mammals, the other animals perform those activities, and some do those things better than we do. For example, just in terms of sense perception, other animals have abilities to see that we don't have. Some animals run much faster than we can, says Aristotle. Some animals can fly. So mobility, sense perception, and perhaps raising offspring, that can't be our human function. Those things don't distinguish us and stand us out. Well, says Aristotle, there's one last possibility. It must be some kind of thinking activity, something to do with our intellects or minds. And that's his proposal on page 4, that there's some area of thinking that we do that none of the plants or animals do, and moreover there will be a virtue for that activity or that function. And so a good human will be a person who does that thinking activity well, and a good life or happiness will be doing that activity well for a full lifetime. That for Aristotle is a short sketch of what happiness is, and he's going to elaborate further. I want to mention that we're looking at one translation of the Nicomachean Ethics, and there are many translations into English that are available, and there are some recent good ones. I'm presenting you extracts from the translation by Terence Irwin, who was a professor at the undergraduate school that I attended, and his translation of the Nicomachean Ethics is very clear and easily organized. And we do have a copy of Irwin's translation at the library. It's call number B430.45. For now, I would like that you focus on reading our extracts only and working with those short statements from Aristotle, and perhaps on a future occasion, or if you're further interested, you could read the first full book of Nicomachean Ethics. Well, I'm ready for series 2.3. I hope you are too.